I'm Jessica Palmer, 28, and I've spent my entire life hearing my mother say I wasn't good enough. When I planned to take my dad to Maison Azure for his 60th birthday, Mom scoffed, "You can barely make rent. How could you possibly afford that place?" Little did she know that later that evening, the maitre d' would greet me with, "Good evening, Miss Palmer. The other restaurant is ready for your inspection whenever you're ready, owner." The look on my mother's face was priceless. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to find out how I went from struggling chef to restaurant owner right under my mother's nose. My apartment in downtown Chicago wasn't much to look at. A tiny one-bedroom with barely functioning appliances and a view of the brick wall next door. But it was mine and I'd fought hard for it. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5 a.m., chug coffee from my chipped mug, and head to my job as a line cook at Bistro Garten, a mid-range restaurant where I'd been working for the past 3 years since graduating culinary school. The pay wasn't great, which is why my weekends were spent taking any catering gig I could find. Wedding receptions, corporate events, birthday parties, I did them all. Between the student loans from culinary school and Chicago's rising rent prices, I needed every dollar I could get. But despite the financial struggle, I never regretted my career choice. Cooking wasn't just a job. It was the only thing that ever made sense to me. My mother, Pamela Palmer, had a different perspective. Cooking is for people who couldn't succeed at real careers. She'd say during our weekly Sunday phone calls, "You could have been a lawyer or doctor with your brains, Jessica. Instead, you're flipping burgers and living paycheck to paycheck." Each time she said something like this, my father, Robert, would try to intervene. "Pam, Jessica is following her passion. That's worth more than money." His gentle voice would drift through the speakerphone, always the mediator between us. Dad was the reason I fell in love with food in the first place. When Mom would work late at her accounting firm, Dad and I had our special ritual. He'd pull out his worn cookbook collection, put an apron on me that draped down to my ankles, and we'd create magic in the kitchen. "The secret to a perfect sauce," he'd say, carefully stirring a pot while I stood on a step stool beside him, "is patience. You can't rush greatness." I remember when I was 10, Dad took me to my first fine dining restaurant. It wasn't anything super fancy, just a local French bistro, but to me it felt like entering another world. While other fathers were taking their daughters to Disney movies, mine was teaching me the difference between béarnaise and hollandaise sauce. "Watch how the servers move," he'd whisper across the table. "It's like a ballet. Someday, Jessica, you'll create food that makes people feel the way we feel right now." My mother never understood these outings. When I won my first cooking competition at 16, a citywide high school culinary challenge, Mom didn't even attend. She had a networking event that couldn't be missed. Dad came alone, cheering louder than anyone when they called my name for first place. The trophy from that competition still sat on my bookshelf, alongside the ones that followed. Each one represented a small victory in my journey, tangible proof that I was on the right path despite my mother's doubt. The dynamic between my parents always puzzled me. Dad, with his warm smile and encouraging words, had somehow ended up with Mom, whose sharp edges and critical eye seemed to miss nothing. In their marriage, she was clearly the one in charge. Dad rarely contradicted her directly, preferring to support me quietly when she wasn't looking. I once asked him why he stayed with someone so different from him. We were driving back from a regional cooking competition where I'd placed second. "Your mother wasn't always like this," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Life hardened her. She grew up with nothing and fought for everything she has. She wants security for you because she never had it." "But I'm not her," I replied. "No, you're not," he agreed with a sad smile. "You're like me. You need to create, to express yourself through your work. She'll understand someday." That someday never seemed to arrive. Year after year, as I moved from culinary school to internships to my current position, Mom's disappointment only grew. Each achievement I shared was met with concerns about stability, benefits, retirement plans, practical matters that felt so distant from my dreams of creating food that moved people. Yet despite it all, I kept going. Each morning, I'd look at myself in my bathroom mirror, recite Dad's mantra, "You can't rush greatness," and head out to prove myself in the kitchen once more. When Dad turned 59, he had a heart attack. It wasn't major, thankfully, but it was enough to shake our family to its core. For 3 days I camped out in the hospital waiting room, abandoning my shifts and watching my mother pace the sterile hallways. It was the first time I'd seen real fear in her eyes, the first crack in her armor of certainty and control. After his recovery and subsequent surgery, Dad seemed different, more present, more determined to enjoy life. "When you stare death in the face," he told me during one of my visits to their suburban home, "you realize how many experiences you've been putting off for someday." That's when he first mentioned Maison Azure. The restaurant had been open for just 2 years, but had quickly become Chicago's most exclusive dining destination. With 2 Michelin stars and a celebrity chef from France, it was nearly impossible to get a reservation, and the prices were astronomical. "I've always wanted to try true French haute cuisine," Dad confessed, showing me a magazine article about the restaurant. "Their duck confit is supposed to be transcendent." In that moment, looking at my father, thinner now, with new medications lined up on the kitchen counter, I made a decision. His 60th birthday was 3 months away, and I was going to take him to Maison Azure if it was the last thing I did. The planning began immediately. First, I researched the restaurant thoroughly, studying their menu, prices, and reservation policies. A dinner for 3 would cost well over $1,000 with wine pairings. It was an impossible sum for someone in my financial situation, but I was determined. I picked up extra catering shifts, started doing private cooking lessons on the side, and even sold some of my rarely used kitchen equipment. Every dollar went into my dad's birthday fund, hidden in an envelope in my nightstand. 2 months before his birthday, I called Maison Azure to make a reservation. The hostess initially told me they were fully booked, but when I explained it was for my father's 60th birthday after his heart surgery, she softened and found an opening. "We have a table at 7:30 p.m. on that Saturday," she said. "Shall I put it under your name?" "Yes, please," I replied, heart pounding as I committed to the date. Palmer, Jessica Palmer. Next came the special request. I asked to speak with the head chef about potentially preparing my dad's favorite dish, cassoulet, a French bean stew with duck confit that he'd loved since his 20s but rarely indulged in due to my mother's health concerns. The chef was surprisingly accommodating. "For milestone celebrations, we're happy to make adjustments," he assured me. "I'll prepare a heart-healthy version of our cassoulet that your father will love." With everything set, I finally announced my plan during Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I'd made a simple roast chicken, one of the few dishes my mother actually complimented. "I've made arrangements for Dad's birthday dinner," I said casually as I passed the green beans. "I got us a table at Maison Azure." The clatter of my mother's fork against her plate broke the silence that followed. "Maison Azure?" she repeated, eyebrows rising toward her perfectly colored hair. "Jessica, be serious. That place costs a fortune." "I've been saving," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's all taken care of." Mom laughed. Not her genuine laugh, but the short, dismissive one she used when she thought someone was being ridiculous. "You can barely pay your rent. How could you possibly afford Maison Azure?" Dad placed his hand over mine. "That's incredibly generous, sweetheart. But your mother's right, it's too much." "It's already done," I insisted. "The reservation's made. I've even spoken to the chef about preparing cassoulet for you." Mom's expression hardened. "You're going to put yourself into more debt for one dinner? This is exactly the kind of financial irresponsibility I worry about." "It's my money," I said quietly. "And it's Dad's birthday." "Let her do this, Pam," Dad interjected, his voice unusually firm. "It means a lot to her." The argument simmered down, but Mom's disapproval lingered in the air like smoke. As I was leaving that night, she pulled me aside at the door. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said. "I don't want you calling us next month because you can't make rent." I just smiled and kissed her cheek. "I'll see you on Dad's birthday." The following weeks were a blur of preparation. I worked double shifts until my feet ached, coming home so late that I barely had time to sleep before starting again. I cut every possible expense, making coffee at home, bringing lunch to work, walking instead of taking the bus when weather permitted. At night, I practiced making versions of the dishes that might be served at Maison Azure, studying techniques from online videos of the restaurant's famous chef. I wanted to be able to discuss the food intelligently with Dad, to make the experience even more special for him. A week before the big day, I found a beautiful navy blue dress at a consignment shop that looked far more expensive than it was. Standing in front of the mirror in the small changing room, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of pride. Despite everything, I was making this happen. But my mother's doubt had planted a seed of anxiety that grew as the day approached. What if something went wrong? What if the restaurant lost our reservation? What if the meal wasn't as special as I'd built it up to be? These questions swirled in my mind as I counted down the days to Dad's birthday celebration. 3 weeks before Dad's birthday, I was working a catering job at the home of Sylvia Blackwell, a renowned food critic for the Chicago Tribune. It was a small dinner party for 12 guests, mostly people from the city's culinary scene. I was part of a team of 4, responsible for appetizers and plating. The head chef for the event was running late, stuck in traffic across town. With guests already arriving, I made a quick decision to start sending out the planned appetizers rather than leaving everyone waiting. I added my own touch to the presentations, a drizzle of truffle oil here, a sprinkle of microgreens there. Small adjustments that elevated the dishes beyond the original plan. When the hostess tasted my goat cheese and caramelized fig tartlets, her eyebrows shot up. "These are extraordinary," she said, loud enough for several guests to hear. "Who made these?" I stepped forward, wiping my hands on my apron. "I did, Ms. Blackwell. I hope you don't mind the slight modifications to the menu." Instead of being upset, she began introducing me to her guests. "Everyone, this is Jessica. Remember her name, you'll be hearing it again." Among those guests was Anthony Delgado, a restaurateur known for spotting talent and creating successful dining concepts across the city. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and intense eyes, he watched me work for the remainder of the evening, occasionally asking questions about my techniques and background. As the event wound down and we were packing up, Anthony approached me in the kitchen. "Those lamb sliders with the harissa aioli," he said, leaning against the counter. "That's not a standard catering menu item." I looked up from the container I was sealing. "No, it's my own recipe. The chef gave me some freedom with the appetizers." "Do you have a card?" he asked. I almost laughed. Business cards were for people with real culinary careers, not line cooks picking up catering gigs. "No, but I can write down my information." On the back of a receipt, I scribbled my name and phone number, trying to keep my hand steady. Anthony Delgado was asking for my contact information. It felt surreal. "I'm always looking for fresh perspectives," he said, pocketing the paper. "You might be hearing from me." I assumed it was just a polite gesture, the kind successful people make to be nice without any real intention of following through. So when my phone rang 3 days later with his name on the caller ID, I nearly dropped it in shock. "Jessica." His voice came through clear and direct. "I'd like to meet with you to discuss a potential opportunity. Are you available tomorrow morning?" The next day, I called in sick to Bistro Garten for the first time in 3 years and met Anthony at his office downtown. The space was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. "I'll get straight to the point," he said after offering me coffee in a pristine white cup. "I'm developing a new restaurant concept, and I need someone with vision to help shape it." He slid a folder across the glass table. Inside were preliminary plans for a new restaurant in the Gold Coast neighborhood, prime real estate just blocks from Maison Azure. "I want to create something that bridges the gap between fine dining and accessibility," he continued. "Food that's sophisticated but not pretentious. And based on what I tasted at Sylvia's, I think you might be the perfect person to develop the menu." I stared at him, waiting for the catch. "Mr. Delgado." "Anthony," he corrected. "Anthony, I'm a line cook. I don't have experience developing restaurant concepts or creating full menus." He leaned back in his chair. "Do you know what my job is, Jessica? I recognize talent. I see potential before others do. And I trust my instincts." He tapped the folder. "This isn't just a job offer. I'm proposing a partnership. You develop the culinary direction, and I handle the business side. You'd have creative control of the menu and kitchen, plus a 15% ownership stake." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Ownership? I can't afford to invest in a restaurant." He waved dismissively. Your investment is your talent and sweat equity. I'm financing the operation. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with Anthony several times, each meeting making the opportunity more concrete. We discussed concept, menu ideas, staffing structures. He took me to the proposed location, a former art gallery with high ceilings and exposed brick that would need significant renovation but had incredible potential. During one of our menu development sessions, I prepared several dishes in the test kitchen at Anthony's current restaurant. As he tasted my signature dish, scallops with brown butter, sage, and a pumpkin puree, his expression confirmed what I was beginning to let myself believe. This was really happening. What would we call it? I asked as we reviewed the architect's preliminary drawings. Anthony looked at me thoughtfully. I was thinking Palmer's. Simple, elegant, personal. My name on a restaurant in the Gold Coast. Seemed impossible. The contracts were drawn up, legal terms negotiated. The financial projections showed that with Anthony's reputation and connections, the restaurant could be profitable within a year, potentially very profitable. My 15% stake could change my financial situation completely. Through all of this, I told no one, not my coworkers, not my friends, and certainly not my family. Partly, I was afraid of jinxing it. Restaurant ventures failed all the time. But I also wanted to wait for the perfect moment to reveal it to my parents, especially my mother. After years of doubting my career choice, here was tangible proof that I was on the right path. As I signed the final partnership agreement, a strange mixture of emotions washed over me. Excitement about this life-changing opportunity, anxiety about the enormous responsibility, fear of failure that would prove my mother right. And underneath it all, a steely determination to succeed that had gotten me through years of her doubt. Anthony shook my hand firmly. Welcome to restaurant ownership, Jessica. The real work starts now. Little did he know that the timing of this venture would create the most dramatic family dinner of my life. With just 2 weeks until Dad's birthday dinner, my life became a carefully orchestrated chaos. By day, I continued working at Bistro Garten, giving my notice quietly to the head chef who seemed genuinely sad to see me go. By night, I was at the construction site of Palmer's, making decisions about everything from kitchen equipment to light fixtures. The location Anthony had found was perfect, just 3 blocks from Maison Azure in the heart of Chicago's upscale dining district. The space had character, with its original tin ceiling and exposed brick walls, but needed significant renovation to transform into a high-end restaurant. What do you think about this tile for the kitchen? Anthony would ask, showing me samples. Or, the contractor needs to know about the placement of the prep stations by tomorrow. Decisions that would normally take weeks of consideration had to be made in moments. I found myself standing in the half-constructed space late at night, trying to visualize the flow of service, the movement of staff, the experience of guests. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Anthony had assembled a team of professionals who respected his track record, contractors willing to work overtime, designers eager to be associated with his newest venture, and suppliers offering their best products. Money wasn't being spared, which made my head spin considering the financial struggles I'd lived with for years. The hiring process began almost immediately. I needed a sous chef who could complement my style and help execute my vision. After interviewing several candidates, I connected instantly with Melissa Chun, a talented chef whose technical precision balanced my more intuitive approach. I've been following Anthony's restaurants for years, she told me during her interview. But I'm really here because I heard about you. About me? I asked, surprised. Word travels in the culinary community. People who were at that dinner party haven't stopped talking about your food. I want to be part of what you're building. Having someone believe in me so completely was a new sensation. Melissa quickly became not just a colleague but a confidant as we worked late into the night developing the menu, testing recipes, and building the kitchen team. Meanwhile, the tension with my mother continued to build. Our weekly Sunday dinners became increasingly strained as Dad's birthday approached. Have you canceled that reservation yet? Mom asked during one such dinner, passing me a bowl of salad. There's still time to do something more reasonable. The reservation stands, I replied, keeping my voice even. Everything's taken care of. She sighed dramatically. I just don't understand why you insist on spending money you don't have. We could have a lovely dinner right here at home. It's not about the money, Mom. It's about giving Dad an experience he's always wanted. An experience that will leave you broke, she countered. You know, Cynthia's daughter just got promoted at her law firm. Partner track, full benefits, retirement plan. Dad intervened as he always did. Pam, please. Jessica is doing something nice for my birthday. Can we just appreciate that? But Mom wasn't finished. I'm only thinking of her future. At her age, I was already established in my career with savings and a clear path forward. What's your 5-year plan, Jessica? Still working 60-hour weeks for barely above minimum wage. The irony of her question hit me hard. If she only knew that I was about to open a restaurant that industry insiders were already buzzing about. That I had signed contracts worth more than she probably imagined I'd make in 5 years. That in a matter of weeks, I would be her version of established. But I said nothing, swallowing both my food and my words. 3 days before Dad's birthday, Mom called me. I've been thinking about this dinner, she began without preamble. And I'm worried you're going to embarrass yourself trying to act like you belong there. What do you mean? Asked, stepping away from the construction noise at Palmer's. Places like Maison Azure have certain expectations. The way you dress, the way you conduct yourself. The staff can tell immediately who's out of their element. A surge of anger rose in my chest. I think I can manage to eat dinner without embarrassing you, Mom. That's not what she started. Then sighed. Look, I'm just trying to help. Your father would be just as happy with dinner at that Italian place near your apartment. The reservation stands, I repeated. The same words I'd been saying for weeks. I'll see you both on Saturday at 7. After hanging up, I nearly told Melissa everything. About my mother's doubt. About the satisfaction I'd feel seeing her face when she learned about Palmer's. But something held me back. When the moment came, I wanted it to be organic, not staged. The final days before the birthday were a blur of activity. The soft opening of Palmer's was scheduled for 2 weeks after Dad's birthday. But we needed the kitchen functional before then for menu testing. Equipment was being installed, staff was being trained, and everything seemed to be happening at once. The night before Dad's birthday, I found myself alone in my apartment, too exhausted to sleep. The new dress I'd bought hung on my closet door. And the confirmation for the Maison Azure reservation sat on my nightstand. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. I texted Melissa. Everything ready for final inspection tomorrow? Her reply came immediately. All set, chef. Your father's going to be so proud. Tears welled unexpectedly at her words. Pride from my father had never been in short supply. It was my mother's approval that had always felt just out of reach. Would tomorrow finally change that? As I finally drifted off to sleep, I wondered how different life might feel in just 24 hours. I woke before my alarm, my body tense with anticipation. Today was the day. Dad's 60th birthday and possibly the most important dinner of my life. The morning light filtered through my blinds as I made coffee and tried to calm my racing thoughts. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Looking forward to tonight, sweetheart. No matter where we eat, being with you is the best gift. His message brought tears to my eyes. Despite Mom's negativity, Dad had never wavered in his support. Tonight was for him. At noon, I headed to Palmer's for a final check before getting ready for dinner. The transformation of the space over the past 2 weeks was remarkable. The dining room was nearly complete, with tables and chairs in place, lighting installed and the bar fully stocked. The kitchen gleamed with new equipment, everything arranged according to my specifications. Anthony met me at the door, clipboard in hand. Today's the big reveal, huh? How are you feeling? Nervous. Excited. Terrified, I admitted. Is that normal? He laughed. Completely normal. But everything here is right on schedule. Melissa has the kitchen team prepping for tomorrow's test dinner. Wine deliveries are complete, and the signage will be installed this afternoon. We walked through the restaurant, checking final details. The sign, Palmer's in elegant script, was being carefully mounted above the entrance. Seeing my name there made everything suddenly overwhelmingly real. I can't believe this is happening, I said softly. Anthony squeezed my shoulder. Believe it. You earned this. As I was about to leave, my phone buzzed again. It was Mom. Are you still going through with this charade tonight? I took a deep breath and typed back. See you at 7. Wear something nice. At home I took extra care getting ready. The navy blue dress fit perfectly, and I styled my hair in an elegant updo that I rarely had occasion for. As I applied my makeup, I practiced what I might say when the moment of truth arrived. Nothing sounded right, perhaps because no words could adequately capture the journey that had led to this point. At 6:30 I called a ride service, too nervous to drive myself. On the way to Maison Azure, I received a call from Melissa. Chef, everything's ready at Palmer's. The signage looks amazing, and we've prepared the private dining room as requested. The staff knows to expect you after your dinner at Maison Azure. Thank you, Melissa, for everything. Just enjoy your father's face when he finds out his daughter's a restaurant owner. She replied. We've got everything covered here. The car pulled up to Maison Azure at 6:50. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a historic building, its facade elegant and understated. A small brass plaque beside the door was the only indication of the culinary temple within. I asked the driver to wait. My parents should be arriving any minute. Sure enough, a taxi pulled up just moments later. Dad stepped out first, looking distinguished in a suit I hadn't seen before. He helped Mom out, and I noticed she was wearing her pearl necklace, reserved for only the most special occasions. Dad spotted me and broke into a wide smile. There she is, the birthday planner herself. He embraced me warmly while Mom assessed my appearance with critical eyes. That dress is new, she noted. Another expense. Happy birthday, Dad, I said, ignoring her comment. Ready for an unforgettable dinner? Absolutely, he beamed. I've been looking forward to this all month. As we approached the entrance, I felt a flutter of nerves. Not about the dinner itself, but about what would follow. The path I'd set in motion weeks ago was about to reach its climax. The maitre d' greeted us at the door, a tall, elegant woman in a perfectly tailored suit. Good evening. Welcome to Maison Azure. Thank you, I replied. Reservation for Palmer at 7 o'clock. She checked her tablet, then looked up with a smile of recognition. Ah, Miss Palmer. Yes, we have your table ready. Please follow me. As we walked through the restaurant, I could feel Mom's approval of the surroundings, the soaring ceilings, the perfect lighting, the impeccable table settings. Dad was like a child at Christmas, taking in every detail with wonder. This place is magnificent, he whispered to me. The maitre d' led us to a prime table near the windows overlooking a small courtyard garden illuminated with soft lights. As we were seated, several staff members approached with unusual deference. Good evening, Miss Palmer, said the sommelier. It's an honor to serve you tonight. I've selected several wines that I believe will complement Chef Moreau's tasting menu perfectly. Mom looked at me with confusion, clearly surprised by the staff's familiar and respectful tone. Before she could say anything, the restaurant manager approached our table. Miss Palmer, everything is to your liking, I hope? The other restaurant is ready for inspection whenever you are, owner. The new signage was installed this afternoon, and the kitchen team is prepared for your arrival later. The moment froze in time. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Mom's mouth opened slightly, her eyes darting between me and the manager. Other restaurant? She asked, her voice barely audible. Owner. The manager's face registered confusion, then understanding, then embarrassment. I apologize, I didn't realize. I'll give you some privacy. He retreated quickly, but the damage, or perhaps the revelation, was done. Dad recovered first, a slow smile spreading across his face. Jessica? What's going on? I took a deep breath. The moment had arrived, though not exactly as I'd planned it. I was going to tell you both after dinner, but I've become a partner in a new restaurant. It's called Palmer's and it's opening in 2 weeks. Just a few blocks from here, actually. Mom stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Partner? How is that possible? Dad reached across the table and took my hand. Tell us everything, sweetheart. The appetizers arrived, delicate plates of foie gras torchon with fig compote and brioche, but none of us moved to taste them. The revelation hung in the air between us, demanding elaboration. It started 3 weeks ago. I began, keeping my voice low despite the urge to proclaim everything at full volume. I was working a catering job at Sylvia Blackwell's home. She's a food critic for the Tribune. The head chef was late, so I took initiative with the appetizers. One of the guests was Anthony Delgado. Mom's eyes widened at the name. Even she knew of Anthony's reputation in Chicago's restaurant scene. He tasted my food and asked for my contact information. I thought nothing would come of it. But he called me 3 days later with a proposal. He was developing a new restaurant concept and wanted me to be part of it, not just as a chef, but as a partner with creative control and 15% ownership. Dad's face shone with pride. My God, Jessica. That's incredible. We've been working nonstop for weeks, I continued. The restaurant is almost ready. We're doing a soft opening 2 weeks from now. It's in the Gold Coast, just 3 blocks from here. That's why the staff knows me. We've been coordinating with some of the same suppliers and contractors. Mom had barely moved, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke. Why didn't you tell us? The question was simple but loaded with complexity. I chose my words carefully. At first I wasn't sure it was real. These opportunities fall through all the time. Then, as it became more concrete, I wanted to wait for the right moment. I paused. And honestly, Mom, I wasn't sure you believe me. Her eyes flashed. You didn't think I'd believe you? Why would you think that? The dam broke. Years of held-back responses flooded forth. Because you've never believed in my career choice. You've spent years telling me I was wasting my potential. That I'd never make enough money. That I'd regret not becoming a lawyer or accountant or whatever you thought was respectable. Every achievement I've shared has been met with criticism or concerns. Dad placed a calming hand on my arm, but I wasn't finished. Do you know how hard it's been? Working 60-hour weeks, taking every extra shift. Developing my skills while constantly hearing that it wasn't good enough, that I wasn't good enough? And now? When something amazing happens, something that validates all those choices you questioned, you ask why I didn't tell you. The table fell silent. A server approached with our next course, saw our untouched appetizers and tactfully retreated. Mom's face had paled. Is that really how you see me? As someone who thinks you're not good enough? How else am I supposed to see it? When have you ever been happy with my choices? She looked down at her plate, then back at me. I was trying to protect you. The restaurant industry is brutal. The failure rate is astronomical. I've seen so many talented people work themselves to exhaustion for businesses that fold within a year. So your solution was to undermine my confidence at every turn? I wanted you to have a backup plan, she insisted. Security. Stability. Dad cleared his throat. Pam, I think what Jessica is saying is that your concern came across as disapproval. As lack of faith in her abilities. Mom's defensive posture softened slightly. She picked up her water glass, took a sip, and set it down with deliberate care. My mother worked as a line cook. She said quietly. Did you know that? I shook my head surprised. Mom rarely spoke about her parents. 60 hours a week in a hot kitchen for 30 years. Varicose veins, burned hands. Working holidays and weekends while other families were together. She was talented, more talented than the head chef, but she never advanced because she was a woman in a man's world. Mom's voice had taken on a distant quality. When she died, all she had was a small apartment full of cookbooks and a body worn out from standing on concrete floors her whole life. The revelation stunned me into silence. I'd known Mom grew up with little money, but she'd never shared this specific connection to my chosen field. When you showed interest in cooking, she continued, all I could see was history repeating itself. I pushed you toward other careers because I was terrified you'd end up like her. Undervalued, overlooked, physically broken. But that's not the only possible outcome, I said, my anger giving way to something more complex. The industry has changed. There are so many successful female chefs now. I know that intellectually, she admitted. But emotionally, I see my little girl heading into the same hardship my mother endured, and it terrifies me. Dad, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Pam, have you ever told Jessica this before? About your mother? She shook her head. It's painful to talk about. Easier to focus on practical concerns, money, benefits, career advancement. So instead of telling me your real fears, I said slowly, you made me feel like I wasn't good enough. A tear slipped down her cheek, something I'd rarely seen in my life. I never meant to make you feel that way. I thought I was pushing you to protect yourself, to aim higher. The server returned, and this time Dad politely asked if we could have a few more minutes. The restaurant hummed around us, other diners enjoying their meals in blissful ignorance of our family revelation. I need you to understand something, Mom, I said after the server left. I'm good at what I do. Really good. Anthony Delgado, one of the most successful restaurateurs in Chicago, is betting on me. Not out of charity, but because he believes my talent will make us both money. She nodded slowly. I'm beginning to see that. And this restaurant, Palmer's, it's not just a job. It's everything I've worked for. It's my name, my vision. If it succeeds, it changes everything. If it fails, I took a deep breath. If it fails, I'll still have gained experience and connections that will open other doors. But it's not going to fail. Mom reached across the table and did something rare. She took my hand. I've been wrong about how I've approached this. I can see that now. But please understand, it was never because I didn't believe in you. It was because I was afraid for you. Dad raised his water glass. I think this calls for a toast. To Jessica, chef and restaurant owner. And to Palmer's, may it be the first of many successes. Mom hesitated, then raised her glass as well. To Palmer's, she echoed, and for the first time in years, I heard what might have been genuine pride in her voice. As we finally turned our attention to the magnificent food before us, Mom asked a question that surprised me with its sincerity. Will you show us your restaurant after dinner? I'd like to see what you've created. The tension that had defined our relationship for so long hadn't disappeared. But something had shifted. A door had opened, allowing the possibility of a new understanding between us. I'd love to, I replied. In fact, the staff is expecting us. After dinner at Maison Azure, which Dad declared was magnificent, but probably not as good as what you'll serve at Palmer's, we took a short walk through the Gold Coast neighborhood. The evening air was cool but pleasant, carrying the promise of spring despite the lingering chill of late winter. As we rounded the corner onto Maple Street, the new sign came into view. Palmer's illuminated in soft gold against the restored brick facade of the building. Seeing my parents' reactions was worth every second of the secret-keeping. Dad stopped in his tracks, eyes wide with wonder. Palmer's, he read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. Jessica, it's beautiful. Even Mom seemed genuinely impressed, taking in the elegant exterior with appreciative eyes. Very sophisticated, she admitted. The location is prime. I used my key to unlock the front door, feeling a surge of pride as I led my parents into the space that represented my future. The interior was bathed in the soft glow of ambient lighting, highlighting the exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, and custom-built oak tables. This is all yours, Dad asked, turning slowly to take in every detail. Mine and Anthony's, I corrected. But the culinary direction, the menu, the kitchen, that's all me. Melissa emerged from the back, along with two of our newly hired line cooks who had been prepping for tomorrow's test dinner. Mr. and Mrs. Palmer, welcome to your daughter's restaurant, Melissa said warmly. I'm Melissa Chun, Jessica's sous chef. We've heard so much about you. Dad shook her hand enthusiastically while Mom offered a more reserved greeting. I could see her assessing Melissa, young professional, clearly competent, and perhaps reevaluating her assumptions about the people I worked with. I gave them the full tour. The main dining room with its 60 seats, the private dining area for special events, the bar with its carefully curated selection of spirits. But it was the kitchen that truly showed the scale of what Anthony and I had created. This is state-of-the-art equipment, I explained as we walked through the gleaming space, custom designed for our menu and workflow. Dad ran his hand over one of the countertops, smiling at the sous vide setup and specialized pasta station. It's like a culinary playground. Jessica, Mom said, stopping before a small display case near the kitchen entrance. What are these? Inside the case were my cooking competition medals and certificates, arranged chronologically from high school through culinary school. The centerpiece was my award from the Chicago Rising Chef competition from 2 years prior, an honor I'd mentioned to my parents but which had been overshadowed by Mom's concerns about my lack of health insurance at the time. Anthony insisted we display them, I explained, slightly embarrassed. He says it builds customer confidence to know the chef has credentials. Mom studied the awards, reading each plaque carefully. I didn't realize there were so many, she said quietly. There's a lot you don't know about my career, Mom. Melissa had prepared a small tasting of items from our opening menu. We sat at the chef's table, a special seating area with a view into the kitchen, while she presented each dish with professional flair. This is our signature starter, she explained, setting down small plates before each of us. Seared scallops with brown butter, sage and pumpkin puree. Dad took a bite and closed his eyes in appreciation. Incredible, he murmured. Mom was more methodical, taking small, deliberate bites and considering each flavor component. After tasting the scallop dish, she set down her fork and looked at me directly. Jessica, I owe you an apology, she said. A real one, not just the acknowledgement from earlier. I hadn't expected this and wasn't sure how to respond. I was wrong, she continued. Not just about your talent, which is evident in this food, but about how I've approached your career from the beginning. I let my fears for you override my support of you. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she insisted. I've spent years telling you what you couldn't do, what wasn't possible. And all that time, you were working toward this, something beautiful and impressive that I couldn't even imagine. I should have had more faith in you. Dad reached over and squeezed her hand, a gesture of support that seemed to give her strength to continue. I can't undo the discouragement I've caused, she said, but I can promise to do better going forward. I'd like to understand your world better. This culinary journey you're on. The sincerity in her voice brought tears to my eyes. I'd like that too, Mom. 2 weeks later, on Palmer's opening night, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by my team, giving last-minute instructions and encouragement. The restaurant was fully booked. Anthony's reputation and some strategic press coverage had created significant buzz around our opening. As I checked the final preparations, a familiar figure appeared at the kitchen door. Mom, dressed elegantly and looking somewhat out of place in the bustling kitchen environment. Am I in the way? She asked hesitantly. Not at all. I assured her, surprised but pleased to see her. Everything okay? Your father's at our table, she explained. I just wanted to wish you luck. And to see if I could help with anything. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. In 30 years I couldn't remember my mother ever offering to help in a kitchen. Actually, I said, recovering, we could use an extra pair of hands plating the amuse-bouche. Nothing complicated. Just placing a Parmesan crisp on each plate. She nodded seriously, as if I'd assigned her the most critical task of the evening. Show me where. For the next 15 minutes my mother stood at the prep station, carefully placing delicate cheese crisps on small plates, her accountant's precision perfectly suited to the task. The kitchen staff shot curious glances her way, but she remained focused, determined to contribute. When it was time for service to begin, I thanked her and walked her back to her table. Dad was beaming with pride, already telling nearby diners that his daughter was the chef and owner. He's been doing that all night, Mom said with an affectionate eye roll, telling anyone who will listen about his culinary prodigy daughter. And you? I asked. How are you feeling about all this? She looked around the crowded dining room, then back at me. Proud, she said simply, and grateful that you're letting me be part of it, despite everything. The evening progressed beautifully. The food was executed perfectly, the service smooth, the reviews from diners enthusiastic. Anthony circulated through the room, charming guests and directing praise toward the real talent, Chef Palmer in the kitchen. Near the end of service, as the final desserts were being prepared, I stepped out into the dining room to greet some of the guests. A food critic from a local blog recognized me and asked for a quick statement about the concept behind Palmer's. As I spoke about my culinary philosophy and vision for the restaurant, I caught sight of my parents at their table. Dad was watching me with obvious pride, but it was Mom's expression that struck me. A mixture of wonder and something that looked remarkably like admiration. 6 months later, Palmer's had become one of Chicago's most sought-after reservations. The reviews had been stellar, with particular praise for my innovative approach to classic techniques. We'd even received a preliminary visit from a Michelin inspector, something Anthony was particularly excited about. On a Sunday evening after closing, I hosted a special family dinner in the private dining room. Dad had invited some of their closest friends to celebrate both the restaurant's success and my recent feature in Food and Wine magazine's Chefs to Watch issue. Mom had taken to organizing these gatherings, working with Melissa to plan the menu and even suggesting wine pairings based on her newly developed interest in enology. The transformation in our relationship wasn't perfect. We still had moments of tension, but the fundamental dynamic had shifted. As I brought out the main course, a refined version of the cassoulet that had been planned for Dad's birthday dinner at Maison Azure, Mom actually stood up to help serve. "Jessica's cassoulet puts Maison Azure's to shame," she announced to the table, with such conviction that everyone laughed. "I'm not just saying that because she's my daughter. Their version was good. This is exceptional." Later, as guests were enjoying dessert, Mom pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about your grandmother lately," she said. "The one who was a line cook." "Your mother," I nodded. "Yes. I think she would have been amazed by what you've accomplished, breaking through in a way she never could." She hesitated. "I have her old recipe box in storage. Would you be interested in looking through it sometime? There might be some family dishes worth exploring." The offer was more meaningful than she could know. A connection to a culinary heritage I hadn't realized I had, and an acknowledgement from my mother that my path was valid, even valuable. "I'd love that, Mom," I said. "Maybe we could cook some of them together." As I looked around at my thriving restaurant, my supportive family, and the team I'd built, I reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The path hadn't been easy, and success hadn't come without sacrifice. But standing there, I felt a sense of completeness that had eluded me for years. Sometimes proving someone wrong is the beginning of something right. Not because of the satisfaction of the "I told you so" moment, though I won't deny that had its appeal, but because it creates space for a new relationship built on truth rather than misconception. My mother had been wrong about my potential in the culinary world, but I had been wrong too, about her capacity to change, to grow, to see me clearly. We were both learning, both evolving. Have you ever had to prove someone wrong to move forward in your relationship? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming doubts and following your dreams against the odds. Remember, sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who need to see your success the most. Thanks for watching, and I hope your own dreams find their way to reality, whether others believe in them or not.